Right. Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Really, just ladies, to week one of Drama Online with Miss Farrell. So, the topic that we're going to do this week is actually going to be delivered to my form twos, threes, and fours. Um, just because it is very important as a foundation for how we're going to proceed with this third term of drama online. So it's very important for you all to understand it. So the topic is the roles on a theater production team. Now, for some of you, this might not be completely new information, but I assure you that if you watch the entire class, you are going to learn some things that you have never heard before. So whether or not it's a revision for you, I want to ask at this point in time that you pause the video and ensure that you have a notebook and a pen or pencil or your fingernail or whatever writing utensil you decide to use, because you are going to need to take notes on everything that I say during this class. So as I was saying, whether or not it's a revision, it's something that everybody needs to know to understand how we're going to proceed with this term and what mindset we're going to begin with. So, speaking about production, what is a production? So, there's the production process, which refers to everything from the conceptualization, which means coming up with the idea of a play or a performance, and the actual performance itself. So, we're looking at the performance as a production, and then we're also looking at the production process, which of course would include rehearsals, um, designing, building, all of these things. So, what kinds of productions might we have? We might have plays, we might have films, film productions, we might have shows, concerts, and we might have a dance production. So, for our purposes today, we are going to use a theater production as the example. Now, what we must understand is that this is an ideal structure that we're looking at. So in many cases, it doesn't follow this exact structure, but this is the general layout. Many of these roles in Trinidad and Tobago or in small theaters or community theaters, school theaters, many of these roles will be covered by one person doing four different roles. Um, so it's not necessarily to say that you'll have a different person as the director, the producer, the choreographer, the playwright. A lot of times the playwright will produce and direct their own play and so on and so forth. So it's not this is an idealistic structure, but it doesn't always necessarily work like this. So productions are put on by a production company usually, and we have some local production companies that you can see the names of below there. So the first role we're going to look at, the one that I would hope we're most familiar with, is the role of the playwright. And of course, we know that the playwright is the person who writes the play. So a lot of times the playwright isn't directly involved in the production, but sometimes they might be. A lot of times the playwright is somebody who lives in a different country, or it's somebody who is deceased. So they cannot actually be involved in the production process. And then you also have situations where students or a group of performers will come up with a play by collaborating, by putting their minds together. Now, this original work is called devised theater. So just take a minute and write that down. Not a minute, take a second and write that down in your notebooks. That when you have an original piece of work, so for instance, if I wanted to employ some of my students from 2C to create a play about COVID-19. Then they would come together and they would bring their ideas, they would do different techniques, exercises, and they would come up with a script, and that script would be an example of devised theater rather than getting a script that already exists. So, of course, one of the most, if not the most popular playwrights is William Shakespeare. Then we have Errol Hill, who is a Trinidadian. So he wrote plays like The Ping Pong Man, Better Man, We have Trevor Rowan, who's Jamaican. We have Derek Walcott, who is St. Lucian. He actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he's most famously known for Tijan and his brothers. These playwrights are all deceased, but we do have playwrights who are alive and well, like Zeno Constance. He is from Trinidad and Tobago, right in Faizabad. He currently teaches in Faizabad and directs and writes and publishes his own plays like The Ritual, The Agouti's Tale, Dueling Voices. There's also Roald Gibbons, who is a Trinidadian, but he works in Jamaica. Lovelace, and also a Trinidadian, and then Victor Edwards, who manages Irie Theatre Production Companies right in Trinidad. One thing that you might notice is, or you may not notice, but you should, is that all of the people I've called so far are male for some reason. And I think this is something that we should think about. Why aren't there any? This is not to say that there aren't female playwrights, but generally, um, our Caribbean playwrights are male. And I think that if you see an issue with that, with us not having any women up here, I think that's something that you should deal with personally. It would be nice to see some HFC students looking into becoming playwrights themselves. And as I said, sometimes playwrights also direct or produce their own plays. So the next role is the role of the producer, which is one that people confuse quite often. So who is the producer? The boss. Full stop. The producer is in charge. They are the person who pick the play. They will also find the money. They'll book the venue, and they will hire everybody. So they are really almost like the CEO of the production. They manage everything and everybody, more or less. So they will choose the stage manager, the team, that the designers, all of that, and of course they will also schedule performances. So things they might have to take into account. For instance, if I'm a producer and I am producing a piece of theater that is for school children, then I am not going to put it in August because nobody's in school in August. So they aren't going to be able to come on field trips to see my play. So I might put it in October or November or April, a month, not April, yes, April, a month when children are in school. So that's something that the producer will have to think about. They'll also have to think about, okay, if it's a show for school children, then I can't put it at 7 o'clock in the evening because they're not in school at that time, so they won't be able to come and attend. And then we are looking at the different directors who work on a production. So they will make up the creative team. We have the director, who we might call the acting director, because they really work with the performers and manage. So they'll take the script and they will form their interpretation and really bring that to life and tell um, or kind of guide the actors on how to bring that to life. And they might also function as a casting director. So this means that they will pick the persons who they'll pick the actors who are going to fill the different roles. And then the musical director works much like the acting director, but in music. So depending on the production, they might actually create the music that is going to be performed, or if it's a musical. So for instance, if it is Hairspray or Beauty and the Beast or something that comes with music already, then the musical director will really just teach the music to the singers or the musicians or whoever is supposed to be performing it. So the acting director or the director will spend most of their time with the performers, and the musical director might as well, but they focus more on the singers or musicians. Right, so this is an example of a musical director teaching songs to some of the cast members who happen to be children. And if you don't have any live music in your production, then you'll probably just have a music consultant who is somebody who will go to and be like, okay, so I have a production about COVID-19. It's set in 2020. what kind of music is in now, what will make it sound contemporary, and you'll consult that person on that. Another type of director is a choreographer who directs movement, namely dance, but sometimes choreographers just work with blocking, just movement. And then in plays where there's stage combat, which is just when people fight on stage, you have somebody who's an expert in stage combat, and they will actually, so that they are the fight director. They will choreograph the movement so that it looks realistic when the people are fighting on stage. So we're going to watch a little video clip. There's no audio because I'm recording this with my headphones on, so you won't be able to hear, but I will send a link to the video if you want to watch the whole thing. It's actually very interesting. So let's just take a moment, oopsie, and look at some stage combat. Nice. So the artistic director, as I said, a lot of times these roles will be covered by one person doing multiple things. So a lot of times the artistic director is the producer. So what they do is that they don't really work directly with the performers, but they manage the overall vision of the company. So they will come up with ideas of how they're going to maintain that vision. Um, for example, if I have a feminist theater company, then I'm the artistic director. I'm going to think about what activities and what plays or what performances can we do that will stay true to our vision as a feminist theater company. So we might do plays written by women, or plays with only female actors, or plays that are on women's issues, or we might do a drive, we might raise funds for breast cancer, things like that. So these are things that the artistic director will take into account. So now this is one that's not commonly discussed, but for us it's going to be the most important one this term, because you are all going to become dramaturgs. So it doesn't matter if you say dramaturge or dramaturg, but what they are essentially is an expert who is going to sit alongside the director and give advice on how to make the production as genuine as possible. So let us take, for instance, if I have a production that is based in 1990 and it's about steel pan, then I will have to either be an expert, or I'll have to do research on how people dressed in 1990. So I'll tell the costume designer, okay, well, they'll have to have this kind of hairstyle, or they'll have to wear these kind of clothes. And I'll say, well, in 1990, people didn't used to use words like zest. So the actors can't use words like that because they have to stay true to the era. I might tell the director, what choices to make and what choices not to make in order to make the performance as accurate as possible. So what a dramaturg will do is that they will research, or they'll be an expert on whatever the play is based on, and they will give advice on how to bring that forward most effectively. So we're not going to go into huge detail about it right now, because we're going to explore it a bit more in the weeks to come. So of course their work is called dramaturgy. Write that down.